How do we manage the protein transition? Which food components can provably boost your immune system? What's the best way to validate health claims for food and food components? Listen to our food and health experts discuss the biggest questions facing the food, nutraceutical, and food ingredient industries today. Welcome to NIZO Talks Food and Health.
In this episode, we talk about food safety. All too often, controlling pathogenic and spoilage microbes in a new or formulated product comes at the end of the development process. In this podcast, you can find out how a more holistic approach from the start can solve potential problems as part of the product development itself. Well, food safety is very important for the food industry. Controlling pathogenic and spoilage organisms is of course very important in new products but also in existing products. Today I'll be talking to Marjon Wells-Bennik. She's a principal scientist food safety at NIZO with vast experience in the academic and industry world. So welcome, Marjon. So could you first start to explain why is controlling pathogens and spoilers such a concern for the food industry?
Sure, thank you very much. Well, to start, when people go to the supermarket to buy their groceries, they will buy it for a number of reasons. So the first will be, is it nice? Is it tasty? Do I really want this? Yeah. Second, of course, will be the cost. But then consumers may also consider, is it environmentally sound, this product, especially in view of sustainability? But in fact, no one will think, is this product safe? Will this product not spoil before the end of shelf life? And that is a given. And that is something the industry has to ensure. When a food is put on the market, by law, the product has to be safe. And of course, we want to make sure that the shelf life is also meeting what is on the package. Unfortunately, sometimes this goes wrong. We all know that there are foodborne incidents, and this has a major impact. Of course, the first impact it has is on the people that actually get sick, but the impact on the industry is also enormous. We're looking at recalls, we are looking at claims they get, but also, of course, the brand and the image can be down the drain. So making sure safety is really ensured and that the shelf life is good is very important for the industry.
Yeah. I like your statement that consumers really want it to be safe and don't even think about it. But if we look at such products, why are we looking for microbial safety in food products? What are we actually looking for?
Well, it's not just microbial safety, it's also chemical safety. So we're looking at contaminants in general that are present in foods. For chemicals, it's relatively easy because you can measure them and you can make sure that they are not coming in with ingredients. You can calculate, you can make sure that the levels are met. You can put specifications on it. But for microbes, this is a little bit different. Of course, you can put specifications on it, but we're looking at a living organism. And even when it's present at low numbers, if it's not inactivated in your process, or if it can grow in a product, you have an acute problem. So this is why microbes are a bit more difficult to handle very often in terms of also food safety.
Yeah, and I can imagine that if you want to come up with a food product that is safe, that you cannot test everything. So modeling is a very important aspect here. What role can modeling play in food safety?
Yeah, so what we know for a lot of the bacteria primarily that can cause foodborne illness, we know how to inactivate them, and we know whether or not they grow under certain conditions, and this is all part of predictive modeling. So for each bacterium that can be a danger to a product, we have that type of information. So this can relate to Listeria, but also to other organisms such as Salmonella, for instance. So we can calculate how much is in the ingredients, what happens throughout the processing, and we can also calculate what happens in a product, so whether or not it grows. And with all that information, you can make sure that whatever comes off the production lines is safe. And yeah, in general, this is important to know because even when your process is good, and let's say 1 in 1,000 of your products comes off the line with a contaminant in, this will be very hard to measure by quality control. But you can calculate this because 1 in 1,000 is of course unacceptable. It has to be much lower than that. So that's why we use modeling as well.
Yeah. Well, I can imagine that that's a very powerful tool to come up with situations which are regarded to be safe, but must also be tested, I think. How do you test such elements in products?
Yeah, so the modeling, it works really well for all the parameters that you know. For instance, if you know the pH of a product or the water activity. But with what you see currently is that there is a big pressure for clean label, for instance, or compounds that are added to a product to make sure that the microbes cannot grow. But not all of this information is part of models, for instance. So you actually do have to test whether that new compound that you're using makes the product safe, or if you reduce your salt or your sugar, that whatever you put in to compensate for these preservative effects, that it's really effective. So testing in the end may also really be needed still.
And the conditions that you use there, that will be the more extreme conditions? How do you go about it?
Yeah, so that's another thing. So normally you have a target formulation, but you also want to look at worst case scenarios. For instance, if a product is not quite the pH that it should be, or if the consumer actually puts it, instead of in the refrigerator, puts it on the shelf in the kitchen, you want to make sure that even under those conditions, the microbes are under control. So that's also very important.
Yeah.
And of course, there's another thing. Microbes can vary a lot. So even within a particular species, for Listeria, there are a lot of different bugs with different characteristics. Some are very acid resistant and they will grow in very acidic products. Others are a bit less so. So you have to do these tests with the right organisms.
And you have a basis to select these microorganisms from?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, here at NIZO, we have a very large culture collection with bacteria that have been identified as such. So you can pick the right strains for the right conditions and also for the worst case conditions.
Okay. Well, and having have a lot of experience in the dairy world, the protein transition is a very big trend nowadays, I would say. New products come on the market. Are the pathogen and spoilage risks the same for dairy products as for example, plant-based products?
Not quite. No, so milk, we know a lot about milk. Decades of research have gone in to make sure that all the different products are safe. And of course, you always start with the same ingredient. You start with milk. It has a certain level of fat and protein, etc. It's always milk. When we look at the plant-based, it can be anything. It can be oat, it can be pea, it can be nuts, etc. And what we have seen so far is that the level of contamination and the type of contamination with microbes is very, very different, very often very high. And we don't know all the species in terms of what they do in the finished product. We also know that not all of these can be inactivated when you do the processing. So we are quite certain that a lot of them will survive and they will end up in your product. So then it's really important to make sure that your product is stable and that the organisms cannot grow out and cause foodborne illness or spoil the product. So it's really a holistic way you have to approach these new products, the design of this.
Yeah, and also what you say, I think, is that the design in of safety from the beginning is an important aspect.
Yes,
going about.
Yes, already starting from the product development stage, I think it's very important for these kind of products. Yeah.
Okay, well, Marjon, thank you very much. You, I think, showed us how important safety is. It's a given for consumers, but certainly not for the food producers. So there is a lot to be done there, and in the new plant-based world, even more to be done. Thank you very much, Marjon. Please subscribe to this podcast. This was NIZO Talks Food and Health, and if you want to know more about this, please check out our website.
Thanks for your attention. If you enjoyed it, please check out our other episodes via our website and other platforms like Spotify, Apple iTunes, and YouTube. Subscribe through your regular podcast app to make sure you never miss an episode.